The Flash 1 Minute War special by Jeremy Adams and a bunch of artists, because there's 4 chapters, so we'll bring up the artists as we go through.
As we go.
So yeah, this it's basically just a series of shorts that tie into the current storyline. This tends to work better when it's more focused like this, because it's you know, because the first story, for example, is a bit of backstory on the enemy, you know, the faction, and where they come from, and how they develop technology that tapped into the Speed Force. They don't call it that, you know, they just call it this energy source, but and how they became greedy and they built all this technology, but it took a lot of resources, so they had to start like sort of stealing Speed Force energy from other worlds. And then eventually, when they found a speedster, because they need technology, they need suits, and they need like tech to like do all this.
And it seems like it's a big deal too, right? Like the suit that the original guy used to get powered up is a very Doc Ock-esque. Like there's, you know, these tubes and stuff that run to him and whatever.
Yeah. Well, but what I was getting at though is that's why they call speedsters organics, because speedsters can just do it without technology. Like they're connected to the Speed Force. So when they first found a speedster on whatever universe they're in, on whatever planet they were on, it let them tap into the idea of the multiverse, and that's when they started going around and doing this. And you know, it says that at first they only went to worlds that were about to die, and they'd get what was ever left. But then they got more greedy, and it kept you know, snowballing.
And the idea that their world was not unlike ours at the beginning. There's a lot of, you know, analogies to Earth and whatever, and we see their Empress in shadow constantly, so I'm sure there's going to be some type of reveal. Yeah,
she's got this veil on. In fact, the main guy, Vel, here in the story, who was the first guy to use the tech, he's like, yeah, I'll go and conquer all these worlds for you if you agree to take my hand in marriage, kind of thing. And she agrees, even though this is like a faux pas for him to do that. So he's been promised that he'll marry the Empress when all these invasions are done. Though I suspect that she doesn't ever really intend to, would just be my guess.
I feel like the invasions will never end.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. So yeah, and that's basically it. So well, this is a series of like short stories, kind of like those Lazarus Planet things. I think I like this generally more because at least this first one, by and large, enhances the main story by giving us more context for the villain. This feels a bit more focused and well thought out, and probably part of that is because it's all written by the writer of the main story. It's not a bunch of different writers coming in to do all these shorts.
Right.
And they're all enhancing things. For example, the second story is how Avery gets involved in everything, because it shows that she was fighting this villain, and that's when they invaded. And she was one of the few Flash characters who wasn't in the main story. Like, you know, all the others we sort of cut around. Her we didn't. So we see her fighting this villain whose name
who steals her soul.
Who steals the soul. She seems alright though without it. Well, she's going to get it back, I noticed.
And so what he's going to do is if he can get into the upper atmosphere, it'll essentially be doom for the planet. And so as she's fighting this guy, he takes her soul and absorbs it, and you know, is going to fly up into the atmosphere. And then the fraction strike, he freezes, and then they take him, right? Which I'm assuming because they got some of the Speed Force energy off of her soul, right? That's why they were gonna take that guy. But they got to take him into space, so she has to hop onto the spaceship and make sure that her soul doesn't detonate, which I like. That was very fun.
Yeah. So it's mostly an action sequence. The art on this one is Serge Acuna. And it's basically her dressing up. She gets her soul back. She fights some of these soldiers from the Fraction, and that's pretty much it. The third story is actually, I'd say that out of the first two, I like the backstory for the villains more. I think I like the third story, maybe my favorite of the four, actually, because it's this little horror story where a few of the soldiers from the Fraction notice this big mansion, and they go in and they're looking around to see if they can find anything, and you see like this knife in the kitchen, like in the foreground, and it's like, oh wait a minute, what's going to happen here? And the soldiers start dying one by one like we're in a slasher movie, and you're like, okay, who is it? And I was thinking Thawne. I was like, okay, this is an evil speedster. Who is it?
I'm thinking Thawne. I'm thinking Cicada, right?
Sure.
like these people that have ties to the Speed Force, or maybe Savitar. Somehow they're, and was not guessing who it ends up being, which was nice. So
yeah, and I really like this one. It's probably my favorite art of the book, the issue. I'd say
it's very moody, like because it does feel like a horror movie. So they did a very good job.
Yeah, it's all suspense, it's shadows, it's the silhouette of the villain holding the knife, and then the last page, of course, reveals who it is, and it's Godspeed. Godspeed's back, everyone. So,
which I forgot where he went, but I know he was in trouble the last time we saw him.
I kind of love it because it's I just love the idea of, like, we haven't really thought about what are the evil speedsters up to during this 1 minute war, because that's kind of a big deal, right? The art here is by Lisandro Esterin, and it has like a sort of watercolor look to it, and it's really nice. Like I think it's a really effective little horror story. So I think the reason why this works really well, despite the fact that sometimes these like collections of short stories, I mentioned already that the main writer's doing all of them, which obviously helps. But I think the fact that the main story was cutting around the different characters anyway, this just kind of feels like a longer issue that happens to be split into 4 segments. So Godspeed's in the mix. That's kind of exciting. The one that feels the most kind of separate, although this is probably setting some things up for later stories, I imagine, from Jeremy Adams. Because the first story is called Past, right? And it's the backstory of the villains. The middle 2 stories are called Present, Part 1 and 2, so they're both taking place during the 1 minute war. This last story is called Future, and it's got art by George Cambadius, and it's set in the future, and it's Jay, Wally's son, grown up, and he's got complete control of his powers. The Fraction have shown up again, and he's controlling his powers well enough now that he doesn't freeze this time. And once he destroys their spire that causes everything to slow down, he's able to use his strength. But what this actually does is bring back a character that was introduced a little while ago, and that is Gold Beetle. And it sets up that Gold Beetle and Jay are, well, not a couple yet, but they're
will be.
They're interested in each other. They kiss. There's a bit of a flirtation. They've met once before. Obviously, we see Iray briefly, who says she sent in a friend who knows you. I'm not gonna lie, I really laughed at, so her Skeets is more of a ship called Beats, and I really laughed at Beats giving her this big introduction before she appears. It's like she's like a wrestler and she's got like 100 nicknames, and I mean, I would just the Queen of the Quantum Realm, the Wave Rider Warrior, next page, the Tiara of Time, the Princess of Paradoxes. I'm not gonna lie, this was making me laugh. I was into this.
I loved all that because it does fit that Booster Gold, right? Because she's Gold Beetle. She's the fusion of Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, So the fact that, of course, she would have all of these.
It's like Blue Beetle's ship combined with Skeets. That's what this is. Is those two things put together. So the art in this part was probably my least favorite of the issue. I think the faces were fine. I really didn't like the weird sort of like limbs that were going on.
The proportions were off in the action sequences.
Yeah, well, and it was very intentional. It was almost like I wouldn't quite say Riley Rosmo-esque, but it had this thing where it was doing like, Jay's legs would be like stretched out over 3 panels, and it would just look really wonky. And I was just kind of like, I don't.
It wasn't sloppy. It just wasn't to my taste.
Yeah. I agree with that. Not to my taste.
Yeah.
But I did like the chemistry between these two characters, and it made me wonder. I wonder how this is going to be brought back up later, because it's obviously not going to naturally just come up in the main story. Like, this is going to be another segment in the future or something.
Yeah, I'm sure because we've seen Gold Beetle. That was when Barry was bouncing around, right? Or that was Wally?
It was when Wally was bouncing around. We met Gold Beetle. Yeah.
And so we met her, and she seemed to know a lot of things, and they were hinting at it. I also thought we were going to get Jay's superhero name. I'm still waiting for that,
He probably hasn't picked it yet, which is why it's not.
Yeah. But so I thought this would have been the time to reveal it, right? Because he's older in the future. He's, probably early 20s, you would guess here.
Well, it gives us a year.
Yeah. What does it say?
I'm pretty sure it was more than that.
Okay.
Now, admittedly, that doesn't mean that he's older. I just mean that we can't judge it based on the year.
Oh, wait, no, he has it. He's still Surge, right? It's Irie who we don't know her full.
Oh yeah. That's right.
name.
Good point. Yeah.
That's right. He's Surge.
Yeah. So. Oh no! Sorry. I read it as the year 2920.
Yeah.
He says action log 2920. Yes. So it's just that's his log entry, not the year. Never mind.
Right.
Never mind.
Okay.
So yeah.
I also like that she's like, you know, so do you keep a diary? You know, like because he's talking about the flashbacks and whatever. He's like, it's not a diary, it's an action log. Like I just thought that line was also very funny.
It's not a comic book; it's a graphic novel.
Yeah, exactly. So, he's very much related to his dad that way. You know what I mean? There's a goofiness to Jay that I like. But yeah, no, it's Irie. I thought we were gonna get Irie's name because he didn't call her Flash or anything.
No.
But yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed this by and large. If anything, the Avery story is probably my least favorite because it was the most straightforward. But it was still fine, like But I loved the horror story of the third one. I thought the backstory added a little bit of layers to the villains. So this is the essential. This is essential for the trade, I would say. Like I think you need to put this in.
Oh yeah, this is just chapter 3 at this point.
Effectively, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's like an interlude chapter, but it is a chapter.
Yeah.
And the final story, like I really like the characters in it, so it makes me excited to see them again at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So, I would say this is a very, very worthwhile add-on to the main Flash book. I wonder why they didn't call it an annual. Maybe just because there was already an annual, or there's going to be an annual later in the year.
That could be, and I mean, just the 1 minute war special works as well. You know, versus an annual.
No, I don't really care. I'm just debating that usually they would just call this an annual and just put it out like that. In fact, there was no annuals this week for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But because usually there is in a week 5. But
yeah.
Hey ho. All right, what are you giving the Flash 1 Minute War special?
I'm gonna give this a solid 8.
Yeah, I'll agree with the 8. I think obviously the stories bounce up and down a little bit, but I would say overall it averages out to about an 8.
Yeah, I'm also, Jeremy Adams' Flash run is becoming one of the special ones for me right now. That it really has to go out of its way to be bad for me to give any lower because I just enjoy reading them. And so I had
to convince you to catch up.
You did. It wasn't something that I was, I feel as much as I love Josh Williamson, I felt like I needed a break. I took that break and then I missed the Flash because the Flash has been my consistent. That was one of the first books I started collecting when I started reading comics again. So. But yeah, no, it's feeling like one of these special runs that we'll talk about, the Adams Flash run, like we do with Wade and Johns. So, and this is just adding more to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I think it's felt that special early on. I was enjoying it. It feels like it's escalating and getting better though recently, which is good. Which means a lot of groundwork was laid and it's starting to really pay off, which is nice.